Fatal Fury 2 was without a doubt a success for SNK. It took everything that worked in the first game and made it better, and was a true rival to Street Fighter 2. But by the time it released, Capcom started something unseen in video games before, a gameplay update to their already released games. After Street Fighter 2 was released, Capcom immediately began working on an updated version dubbed Street Fighter 2 or Champion Edition. This version offered playable bosses, increased speeds, and minor gameplay changes. Not to be outdone by its biggest competitor, SNK announced, only few months after the release of Fatal Fury 2, an updated version of the game, titled Fatal Fury Special. But unlike Capcom, SNK will not only make the bosses playable, but will also add more characters, a guest fighter, new stages, gameplay changes, and a brand new story. The biggest change that Fatal Fury Special brought was adding more playable characters. First, all the bosses from Fatal Fury 2 are now playable, which includes Billy Khan, Axel Hawk, Lawrence Blood, and the mighty Wolfgang Krauser. But that was not enough for SNK, as they brought back 3 characters from the first game, now redrawn and reimagined in the style of Fatal Fury 2. These characters are Terry's master Tang Fu and the breakdancing fighter Duck King. The third character was none other than Fatal Fury's ultimate boss, Geese Howard. The story of the game is a continuation of Fatal Fury 2 rather than a rewrite. Geese Howard, who was presumed dead, is now alive and ready for revenge. Seeing that his half-brother is among the living, Krauser can no longer be considered the king of the underworld, and for that decides to take on Geese. Terry and Andy are also ready to defeat their father's murderer once and for all. In terms of gameplay, Fatal Fury Special is faster than its predecessor when it comes to characters' movements. The biggest change, however, comes into the form of a combo system where you could link moves and cancel some into others. The number of line move attacks have also been increased. Pressing the light punch or light kick button while the opponent is on an opposite lane will perform a low line jump attack. Game balance was also adjusted, which gave the game a competitive side that is still alive to this day.
Nage! Fantastic job to the players.
The single player mode has the player fighting all of the playable characters, beginning with the 8 regular characters from the Fatal Fury 2 game, as well as Tang Fu and Duck King, with the player given a choice for the first opponent. After the first 10 enemies, the player will fight against Billy, Axel, Lawrence, Geese, and Krauser in that specific order. If the player wins every match in 2 rounds only, then he will be challenged by Ryo Sakazaki in a special dream match. The inclusion of Ryo Sakazaki from the Art of Fighting series was so well received that it was the basis for SNK to work on a team-up franchise featuring characters from its library, and hence the idea of the King of Fighters franchise was born. Similar to the previous games, SNK released some very amusing live-action TV spots to coincide with the release of Fatal Fury Special.
Mega Shock Neo Geo!
くつもの伝説が生まれ、そして消えてゆく。狼は眠らない。画廊伝説スペシャル。いくつもの伝説が生まれ、そして消えてゆく。狼は眠らない。画廊伝説スペシャル。
SNK.
The fun did not stop there, as SNK decided to include a number of very fun Easter eggs in the game, like a Flying Kim Cup one, dancing ducks, and more. Fatal Fury Special was released in the arcades on September 16, 1993, followed shortly by a Neo Geo AES version before hitting multiple home consoles. The game had playable ports for the Super Nintendo, Sega CD, and Game Gear, as well as the PC Engine, the X68000, and FM Towns computer platforms in Japan. All that between 1994 and 1996. The Game Gear version was quite the highlight of the home ports releases, as it offered unparalleled fighting game experience on a handheld. Developed by Takara, this version offered 9 playable characters, including the game's secret guest character Ryo Sakazaki. While many of the Fatal Fury Special's memorable roster was missing, like Kim and Krauser, the detailed graphics, music, and beautiful stages made Fatal Fury Special on the Game Gear as the most faithful adaptation of the old Fatal Fury games on handheld. Fatal Fury Special will also receive a direct manga adaptation by Mondo K. The single-volume manga is a direct sequel to the author's Fatal Fury 2 manga and deals with Giza's return, as well as the implication it brings to Southtown, Terry, and to Wolfgang Krauser. After the release of Fatal Fury Special, SNK announced that they are working on a new anime project for the series, but this time, unlike the first 2 direct-to-TV movies, Fatal Fury will be heading to the big screen with Fatal Fury the Motion Picture. Released in 1994, the third and last anime adaptation of Fatal Fury by Masami Obari was an original story not based on any of the games. The story of the movie revolves around the favorite heroes of Terry, Andy, Joe, and Mai trying to help the original character of Sulia stop her brother and his henchmen from collecting the powerful armor of the fallen god Mars. Most of the cast of Fatal Fury Special made cameos during this movie. Originally, Masami Obari and his team had a completely different storyline for the anime. The planned story was to have the Fatal Fury heroes team up with Ryo Sakazaki to defeat Mr. Big. Planned characters from Auto Fighting included Eiji Kisaragi and King, but plans were scrapped in favor of an original story and characters. Fatal Fury the Motion Picture was considered a modest success in cinemas and has recently been re-released in high definition on Blu-ray. You can buy the Blu-ray version from Amazon through the link in the description below. Fatal Fury 2 and then Special made sure to cement the spot of the Fatal Fury franchise as an important pillar of the fighting game genre. SNK knew by then that Terry and his friends could be as memorable as Ryu and Ken when it comes to fighting game character icons. More than a year has passed since the 1993 release of Fatal Fury Special, and while the game was still very successful in the arcades, fans of the series were wondering about the next chapter of the franchise. And while 1994 saw no new Fatal Fury game, fans of these iconic characters were able to play some of them in a brand new game that would soon revolutionize the fighting game scene, The King of Fighters 94. A team-based fighting game that would take SNK to new heights of popularity. SNK, knowing the importance of the Fatal Fury franchise, decided to dedicate a full team from the 8 teams roster to Fatal Fury. Team Italy consisted of Terry, Andy, and Joe. The King of Fighters series will be the subject of another history documentary that will be filmed in Japan next year, so stay tuned. In 1995, SNK was ready to show the next installment of the Fatal Fury franchise. With a release dated for Q1 of the same year, SNK was promising brand new gameplay mechanics and unparalleled graphics for the new game. Unlike the previous 2 games, series creator Takeshi Nishiyama will return to the producing helm of this new title, and this time he is joined by the Art of Fighting series director Hiroshi Matsumoto.
Stretches its icy grip. Lone wolves are back. Fatal Fury 3. Road to the final victory.
As it became almost a custom, SNK would advertise the new Fatal Fury 3 with some more over-the-top live-action ads.
Is that Terry Bogard?
That's great, Terry!
Hey, you want to step outside?
Released in March 1995 in Japan, Garou Densetsu 3 Harukanaru Tatakai, which translates to Legends of the Hungry Wolf 3 The Distant Battle, Worldwide known as Fatal Fury 3 Road to Victory, was clearly a different looking game than its predecessors. Dubbed as the next evolution of the series, Fatal Fury 3 used brand new sprites and graphics that looked more detailed and more colorful. Characters looked bigger and more buffed, and the stages were a sight to behold. Even the character select screen was an original take on the previous games. As for the sound, while the game's themes would not rival its predecessors, Fatal Fury 3 introduced voice-over acting on some cutscenes, which was new to the series. The graphics were not the only thing that saw an overhaul with Fatal Fury 3, as the gameplay was heavily changed from the previous installments. While the game retains the format and controls of the previous chapters of the series, the two-plane battle stages have been revamped into a three-plane format known as the Oversway system. The player fights primarily in the middle plane, also known as the main plane, but can move or oversway into either of the background using LP and LK, or foreground by pressing LK and HP. When the player performs an attack in a sway plane, known as an oversway attack, their character will return to the main plane automatically. Likewise, the player can attack an opponent who is in a sway plane with an anti-oversway attack. The player can also do a quick sway to avoid an attack, leaving the opponent vulnerable to a counter attack. Another innovation seen in Fatal Fury 3, and one that will end up becoming a staple for most SNK fighting games, is the ability to control the height of the character's jump. The game also introduced an air block mechanic when players can block an opponent's attack in mid-air. Fatal Fury 3 also is the first game of the series to officially introduce move cancels, known here as combination arts, allowing the player to cancel a specific series of regular attacks from one to the other. Besides special moves and the desperation moves which require a red life meter like the previous games in the series, Fatal Fury 3 gave each character a hidden ability, which is a stronger version of a super move. This hidden ability occurs once in every 1024 chances whenever the player inputs the command for the character's super special move. This hidden ability can also be used by activating the game's hidden super mode before a match using a secret code. The player will then be able to use the hidden move when his character's life meter is flashing red. Unlike super special moves, a hidden ability can only be used once per round. Fatal Fury 3 also features a fighting level grading system when fighting against the computer. When the player completes a round, their performance is graded from E to S. The final opponents the player faces at the end of the single player mode is determined then by the player's average score. This unique feature introduced a bit of variety when facing against the CPU. And speaking of going against the CPU, the player has the choice between 4 characters as their first opponent: Joe, Mary, Bob, or Franco. After the first 4 opponents are defeated, the player will fight against Ryuji Yamazaki for a plot-based match in which the player must win only 1 round. The player will then proceed to fight against Mai, Andy, Honfu, Sokaku, Terry, and Giz in that specific order, before Yamazaki again for a full match. Depending on the grade average, the game will end against Yamazaki, or the player will fight against either or both of the Jin twins. As for the game's characters, SNK decided to revamp the roster by having half of the selectable fighters as brand new ones. Coming back from the previous games are Terry Bogard, the game and series protagonist, Andy Bogard, their inseparable friend Joe Higashi, as well as Mai Shiranui, who proved to be a massive success for SNK and became an icon for fighting games. The last returning character for Fatal Fury is none other than Geese Howard, who is confirmed to be alive and in hiding thanks to the Fatal Fury special story. Joining these characters are 5 brand new fighters that will soon make their mark on the franchise. Blue Mary, a freelance secret agent and the second female fighter to join the series. Blue Mary lost both her boyfriend and her father in a mission a few years back. She meets Terry and the two became good friends and developed a very strong bond. Han Fu, a detective who is on a case concerning the mass illegal drug trade in Asia. He is always chasing criminals and shares his strong sense of justice with Kim Kap-won. Franco Bash, a former super heavy kickboxing champion who was once undefeated during his fighting career. He retired and now is an airplane mechanic. Sokako Mochizuki, a head of a temple and heir of a clan of Buddhist monks whom are an ancient rival of the Shiranui clan. Bob Wilson, a young Brazilian capoeira fighter and a very cheerful guy. He is the student of Richard Meyer from the first Fatal Fury game and works as a manager of the 2 Pau Pau cafe nightclubs owned by Richard. The game also adds 3 new unplayable boss characters. First, the psychopathic Ryuji Yamazaki, an ex-yakuza with a violent past and now a drug and arms dealer and an influential broker in Hong Kong. He has a rivalry with Han Fu and was hired by the game's 2 bosses to protect them and help them find the legendary scrolls of immortality. Jin Chon-shu and Jin Chon-rei, the official bosses of Fatal Fury 3. They are twin brothers that were orphaned at a young age who have now hired Yamazaki to do their bidding and find the ancient scrolls of immortality. The story of Fatal Fury 3 mainly revolves around the Jin brothers. Orphaned when they were just 6 years old, the twins were left to fend for themselves and work together to survive and live up to their family name as descendants of celebrated powerful general warriors Qin Wanglong and his brother King Konglong. After being left for dead due to a violent attack by bullies, the 2 boys were possessed by the spirits of their ancient ancestors who used their bodies to look for the ancient scrolls of immortality. These scrolls would allow the 2 evil spirits to resurrect themselves in immortal bodies and take over the world. For that reason, they hired the Hong Kong mafia leader Ryuji Yamazaki to find the scrolls, which they know are in South Town. Throughout the game, it is revealed that several other characters are also searching for the scrolls for different reasons. If the player did well throughout the course of their playtime, Chon-rei appears and becomes extremely angry at the defeat of his younger brother, promising that the player character will not leave the place alive. Following the brothers' defeat, their ancestors' spirits depart from their bodies. In the end, it would be revealed that Geese Howard was the one to gather all of the 3 scrolls, only to realize that the prophecy of immortality was but a delusion, and ends up disposing of these useless artifacts himself. When it released, Fatal Fury 3 was met with mixed reviews. In Japan, Game Machine listed Fatal Fury 3 Road to the Final Victory on their May 1st, 1995 issue as being the second most popular arcade game at the time, and according to Famitsu, the famed Japanese gaming publication, scored the Neo Geo version of the game at 32 out of 40. The AES version of Fatal Fury 3 sold over 34,000 copies in its first week on the market. In the West, reviews were also mixed, but mostly positive. The 4 reviewers of Electronic Gaming Monthly scored it at 7.6 out of 10. They had wildly varied reactions to the game, and 2 of them remarked that it lacked the feel of a Fatal Fury game, while acknowledging that Fatal Fury fans might be disappointed by the reduced roster of fighters. Fatal Fury 3 would also mark the first of the series to not receive many ports outside of the Neo Geo family. After the AES and MVS, the game received a Neo Geo CD port, taking advantage of the refined audio qualities of the system, as well as a Sega Saturn port. The next release of Fatal Fury 3 would not happen until 1998, when the game would get a Microsoft Windows PC release. The game would of course get a re-release down the line, whether it is on the Fatal Fury Battle Archives compilation on the PlayStation 2, or the various re-releases on the Wii, Wii U, or through the Aka Neo Geo ports on mini-systems such as PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, and the Xbox consoles. As for media adaptation, and similar to Fatal Fury Special, Fatal Fury 3 received no animated adaptation. In terms of mangas, there were noticeably fewer than the previous iterations, and these included another chapter of the famed nonsensical Bonbon Garou, this time focusing on alternate version of the events of Fatal Fury 3, while a more faithful adaptation was also released, drawn by mangaka Seikuguchi Shun. This single-volume manga stayed true to the story of the game. Immediately after release and seeing the mixed reviews Fatal Fury 3 has gotten, SNK started planning the next chapter of the Fatal Fury series, and this time they will decide to go back to the drawing board and work on what many would see as a fresh and bold soft reboot of the series. I hope you guys enjoyed this video from Neo Geo Now. Now don't forget to like and subscribe if you have not done so, and I would like to take this opportunity and thank my patrons for supporting the channel and making this content possible. Making daily videos and especially the documentaries and lore episodes takes a very long time and a lot of effort, and being able to get some support for these time-consuming tasks allow me to keep going and strive for more and better content. With that said, I want to give a big special shout out to Michael, Bryant Yard, Fahad Al-Suwaidi, SSBM Slick Tricks, Jacques Paul, and Karsten Bear. As well as special thanks to Shaka Asamiya, Refugio Robles, Felipe Guimara, Ji Hao Ju, Muhammad Al-Blushi, Anthony Longino, Burned Retinas, and Lily Wong Esmeralda. Those of you who are not yet Neo Geo Now patrons, I hope you will check my Patreon page where you can become patrons, helping the channel produce more videos as well as receive special perks that are exclusive to patrons, like early access to videos, exclusive making-offs, and other SNK digital goodies. Link for the Neo Geo Patreon page is in the description below. So until next time, thank you for watching.